how he wants to handle his future. Meanwhile, in that division, Terry McLaurin also doesn't have a deal, not close to a deal. The two sides disagree on what would be fair value for Terry McLaurin. So he's back in the organization, but he's still not practicing. He's on the physically unable to perform list. He is entering the last year of his contract in an exploding wide receiver market. And so we now have Washington and McLaurin, Dallas and Parsons, Cincinnati and Hendrickson today. And these things can change fast, Laura, but today, nobody is close to a deal.
Oh, man, it's just fascinating. There's a lot of here, too, of like, I'm just here so I don't get fined, right? McLaurin, by the way, had instant chemistry with Jayden Daniels during his rookie season, and he had significantly better numbers throwing to his top target than all other wide receivers combined. Look at these numbers. Daniels had 12 touchdowns to McLaurin, the third most for any combo in the league in 2024, behind Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those connections are well documented. Here's Jayden Daniels today on his new weapon, Deebo Samuel.
I'll just say for Deebo, I mean, the guy played a lot of football. And he's very understanding of different coverages and routes. And, the guy is a pro, so, and he works hard. So for me, it's like I just go out there and try to communicate, this is what I want versus this look versus this coverage. And he go out there and he puts in the work and he understands it.
Now, Jayden's also talked about McLaurin and said they've been in communication and all these things, if you're wondering. But, RC, if Jayden is without McLaurin at all to start this season, how does this Cliff Kingsbury offense look with Deebo now part of it?
Listen, Deebo Samuel doesn't do what Terry McLaurin does. Deebo Samuel was going to be the perfect complement to what Terry McLaurin does. Deebo Samuel can be used as a Swiss Army knife, play in the slot, play the X receiver, play the Z, get in motion and give you some of the short routes with the yards after the catch. We know how difficult he is to get on the ground with the football in his hands, and it's going to be on Cliff Kingsbury to find ways to get Deebo the football where he can make plays, have one-on-one opportunities in the open field. But make no mistake about it, Deebo Samuel is not a replacement for Terry McLaurin. These players couldn't be more polar opposites in the way that you need to utilize them offensively. Having Terry McLaurin in this building is paramount for Jayden Daniels and paramount for this offense to be able to create explosive plays. And then Deebo Samuel becomes the recipient of some of those two-eye coverages, those coverages that are soft, because now he can catch the ball, work one-on-one with safeties and linebackers, and show just how good he was in San Francisco in that Kyle Shanahan offense.
Yeah, RC, to me, the other problem that Deebo Samuel really solves is when you go back a year ago, maybe the only issue you had with Jayden Daniels was he was sacked 47 times, which was the sixth most amount. So they went out, they traded for Laramie Tunsil, drafted Josh Connolly. When healthy, Sam Cosby presumably will go inside. But Deebo Samuel, as you mentioned, he's so hard to tackle. He averages 9 yards after catch in terms of production. So to me, those long handoffs get the ball out of Jayden Daniels' hands. So I think Deebo Samuel kills two birds with one stone relative to helping keep Jayden Daniels healthy and getting sacked less.
It still comes back to Terry McLaurin, right? They're going to need him in this offense. He was the deep ball threat. He was the go-to guy. He was the guy that made play after play last season. The amount of tough catches that he made rivaled any receiver in the National Football League. He was the player that Jayden Daniels counted on, really a security blanket like Zach Ertz. And again, the season here is just over 5 weeks away from getting here, and the two sides have not made a lot of progress towards a new deal. And you wonder what it would take, because who would think that Terry McLaurin wouldn't have a deal done on July 31st? We know what he means to Washington. They know what he means to their offense, and yet here they are, still struggling to find common ground and a compromise that would enable this deal to get done.
They just showed you that list of who is in this wide receiver room. And if you don't have Terry McLaurin, you don't have a top-end deep ball guy. You don't have a person that you feel is going to go outside and win in one-on-ones. And though Terry McLaurin may not be all of these other people we compare them to when it comes to contract negotiations, He is their number one. He is their most important wide receiver, their most explosive player on the outside, and they have to find a way to have him in camp and have him on the football field game one this year for Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, it's unthinkable to me that he wouldn't be having this figured out by the start of the season, but I will point this out. Only one of the Commanders' first 4 games is against a team that made the playoffs last season, week 2 at the Packers. So maybe if he's not out there early on, they can still get by, but he's kind of. All right, let's talk Vikings. J.J. McCarthy taking over the reins as the starting quarterback with a decent amount of pressure, but also a really good supporting cast and excellent coaching staff to see him out there at training camp. As part of SportsCenter's 50 States in 50 Days, L. Duncan was in Minnesota yesterday, caught up with J.J. McCarthy.
Have you at any point had your, oh my goodness, I am the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings moment yet?
No, I really haven't. You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, it just matters about, you know, taking that responsibility, and, you know, the coaches and the players put so much trust in me, and just making sure I do my job on a daily basis to, you know, help this team succeed in any way I can.
All right, you know this by now. There's a lot of cliches that are thrown around when it comes to football. One of them is building trust with your receivers. But JJ, what does that actually look like, apart from just learning the kind of routes that they run?
You know, it's building the trust on the field, but most importantly off the field. You know, developing those relationships, those intimate relationships that, you know, lead to success on the field. And, you know, just getting with them after practice, playing games with them, and, you know, just sitting with them at lunch. All the little things where you can just bond and grow off the field.
Certainly sounds promising early this offseason for JJ Minnesota, but there are still some questions surrounding his top 2 wideouts. So let's start there. Adam, what's the latest on Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison?
Well, there's no question that these are 2 of the most talented wide receivers in the league and might just be the best tandem in the league, but there are questions about both. Justin Jefferson has some hamstring tightness and some irritation, and the Vikings want to be smart. It wouldn't be a surprise if we didn't see him in the preseason. They're going to be careful. They don't think it's a problem for the opener, but he's had some hamstring issues before. And Jordan Addison is facing potential discipline from the National Football League for a DUI that occurred last year. So we don't know if and when that discipline will occur, but it's very possible that he could be facing a baseline suspension of 3 games as mandated by the collective bargaining agreement. Again, we think Jefferson would be perfectly okay by the time the regular season rolls around. There's a question as to when Addison could be facing potential discipline, but there are 2 questions that hang over the great Vikings wide receiver tandem.
Yeah, RC, can this Vikings defense carry the load early on to help JJ and the offense if they do struggle a little bit?
Obviously, this Vikings defense is extremely explosive. They just re-signed or extended Josh Metellus, who is kind of that Swiss Army knife that they use all over what Brian Flores likes to do with that simulated blitz, 2 safety high shell scheme. But you watched as the year went on last year, there were some teams that started to pick up on the nuances of what Brian Flores did from a disguise to attack and execution standpoint. And so there are going to have to be some new wrinkles. You're going to have to find different ways to get pressure on the quarterback and find ways to create turnovers as well. Early on in the season, when this defense was playing at a high clip, they were turning the football over and they were getting hits on the quarterback. How do they find a way to do that this year when there's, again, more film on the way that they will start plays and then what they will execute post-snap? J.J. McCarthy has an opportunity to walk into a situation that's ready-made for a young player to play well. And we could also find that that ACL tear or that tear of the meniscus last year was something that allowed him to watch from the sideline, see what Sam Darnold did well in Kevin O'Connell's offense, and execute extremely early where Brian Flores' defense won't need to carry this team.
Yeah, and RC, when I was with Rex Ryan with the Jets and we had Mark Sanchez, obviously he was a rookie. We know JJ's a second-year player, but it was all about what you talked about, a great defense, Brian Flores, and then we were able to run the ball. And I think early on, my suspicion is Kevin O'Connell, who ironically was on injured reserve on those Jet teams, is going to approach it in a very similar way. From a standpoint, if you look last year, they were 5th in the league in yards per attempt, and they were able to get the ball down the field, as Adam alluded to 2 great receivers. I would think early on they'll lean on the run game, Aaron Jones, that really good offensive line, and then build that downfield passing game gradually. So, again, J.J. McCarthy not